Will Anderson was the second pick that the Houston Texans made in the first round of this past NFL draft. They traded a lot to get him. They traded their own first round pick. They traded a second round pick to move up and select him. And because of that, because you could have theoretically had three players as opposed to one with early picks, he is going to have a lot of pressure on his shoulders this coming season. We heard from a couple of key figures in the Houston Texans about Will Anderson the last couple of days. First, it was DAmico Ryan who had this to say about the third overall pick back at Texans OTAs.
Will he's been great throughout camp. One thing about Will, he's been the same guy who we thought we were getting when we drafted him, right? He's been on it every single day when it comes to just the effort, the tenacity that he plays with, the energy, everything about him he's been that and more. So Will has gotten better each and every day. He takes coaching really well, and Jock has done a really good job of working with him, of honing in on just those small, fine details of his game. So Will has done a great job of absorbing coaching and being able to take it to the field and apply it. So it's been cool to watch.
I think one of the main reasons that Will Anderson was selected wasn't the production that he had at Alabama. I think one of the reasons he was selected had more to do with the attitude that he had while he was there, the leadership role that he seemed to have that set him apart from a lot of other Alabama defenders that have been in that defense. Anderson, I think the pick was just as much about the locker room influence he could be for a first-year head coach as much as it was about what he was able to do at Alabama. Now, again, it's early, and of course the head coach is going to wax poetically about the third overall pick, but you also heard some complimentary words from Laramie Tunstall about Will Anderson on the Pat McAfee show.
We needed a guy to come off the edge, and I'm glad we got Will. I'm glad Will's a part of the team. And now, for sure, we're going to work in practice. Absolutely. He's going to make me better. I'm going to make him better. That's the whole mindset of the whole team. We're just trying to make each other better. But we get on Sundays, it'll be easy.
One of the things that I hate the most about the way NFL training camp has shifted is that offensive linemen and defensive linemen get less reps than they ever have against one another going up to the year. For the most part, most practices are going to be done in shells. And yes, you do have some training camp practices that feature guys in full pads. But what's, I think, really interesting about Anderson and the advantage that he might have compared to other young pass rushers going into their first season is that if you take a look at both sides of the Texans' offensive line, left tackle Laramie Tunstall, one of the best in the game. Right tackle Titus Howard, another very good tackle. He is going to get as good of a seasoning as he can going into the year, assuming that he stays healthy. Now, for those who are wondering what the Texans are going to do with Will Anderson when the season begins, from what I understand, they view him as a player that would be essentially playing as a wide nine. And I'm not going to act like I'm so good with football terminology that I understand the meaning of that like the back of my hand. But it seems like Will Anderson is going to be given the opportunity to just line up on the edge outside the tight end. So tight ends are going to have to chip him as he pass rushes. And then he will have I think, advantage on a lot of tackles because they're going to have to step out further and more quickly to stop him. And if you're in that wide nine role, you do have to stop things from going outside of you. But from a pass rush perspective, it's pretty advantageous to be put in that spot. And I feel like there is a chance that Anderson is productive because of that. Now, take a look at some past Texans rookies in their first season, the amount of sacks that they had. Go back to 2006. Mario Williams had 4.5. I would assume that 4.5, that is your bare minimum expectation for Will Anderson. There are unfortunate extra expectations on his shoulder because of what the Texans traded up to get. He might not meet those in his rookie season. So I think you got to be patient here. And just think about some of the other Texans that were drafted early that people were expecting a lot out of. Jadeveon Clowney only played 4 games his rookie season. He had 0 sacks. He had 4.5 sacks his second year where he was coming back from a couple of knee surgeries that he'd had over the course of the year before. J.J. Watt only had 5.5. That's a guy that we were talking about at the top of the first round. Now, at the end of the year, he gets that pick 6, and then that frogged him into 2012, and he has the first incredible season of his career. That year, Brooks Reed had 6 sacks, and he was playing in much more of a, hey, I'm just rushing after the passer. Wade Phillips' defense was essentially this system where there's 5 guys in coverage, there's 1 safety back, and then there's 5 guys blitzing. So it's your 3 defensive linemen on the interior of the 3-4 scheme, and you had 2 guys that were blitzing to the outside. It was very predictable and kind of drove me crazy because they never changed it, and that's why the Patriots were able to destroy them the way that they did in the Letterman jacket game and in the playoffs too. But anyway, sorry, we're going all over the place here. To bring it back, Brooks Reed was able to be successful that first season, 6 sacks as a second-round pick, because they were basically asking him to just go straight upfield. And I think that is what Will Anderson is going to have the opportunity to do with the added bonus of going up against guys like Laramie Tunstall and Titus Howard during the offseason. The over-under for his sacks in his first season is 8.25 per DraftKings. With 17 games and with the way that he is supposed to play, and with Jerry Hughes possibly lining up across from him, where Jerry Hughes almost had 10 sacks, I really think that it's possible for Will Anderson to get that over. So if I were a gambling man, I would take the over on that. We'll see what he does this coming season. I feel like you shouldn't put your expectations too high with Will Anderson. Be fair to him. I think he's drafted more as a culture guy than necessarily the guy that's going to come right in and produce. But I also feel like he can be productive in this defense, especially if they're asking him to do what I've heard they're going to ask him to do going into the year.